So, can a tiny little square of plastic eliminate the drift from this Nintendo Joy-Con? No, but it does have some merits. So keep watching and I'll show you how I got on. Okay, so I'm in the process of putting together a video all about stick drift. I've got various different videos about it with different fixes on different controllers, but there's a lot of common themes running through and different methods for different controllers as well. So I'm planning to put together like a whole complete package so that whatever your problem and whatever method you want to try, it'll be in the one video. Now that was mainly focused on things like PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S and X controllers, but I remembered that the first time I encountered joystick drift and tried to fix it was with these things here, the Nintendo Joy-Cons. Now I know that Nintendo offer their own service now. The problem is that bad that you can send them back to Nintendo, get them fixed and returned to you, but sometimes you don't get the same controllers back, and if you've got like limited edition ones, you don't want to be ending up losing those, and sometimes they can come back in less good shape than you sent them off. Just because they've got stick drift doesn't mean you haven't looked after them. So letting them go and then trusting them to come back as they were can be a bit of an issue. Also, it is relatively low cost to fix them. All I've done with these in the past, and I've got videos for the left and right Joy-Con, is open them up, taken the sticks out and replace them with new ones. You can get, let's see, I'm sure I've got one sitting around here. You can get kits like this from Amazon quite easily that come with 2 or even 4 replacement sticks. They're quite straightforward to put in as long as you're very careful with the very fiddly ribbons that are in there, and they carry on working fine just like the original ones did, but they are still prone to drift after a while. One of the things that came out a little while ago that sort of should solve that completely is that you can get Hall sensor sticks for going in these instead, which use magnets instead of physical contacts to detect the movement. So they are pretty good. I've installed a pair of those in some Joy-Cons and they are still working absolutely fine, but they are a bit more expensive. But what I did hear about a little while ago is that someone came up with the discovery that the reason why the drift was happening is because of the actual physical makeup of the stick and the assembly inside the Joy-Con. So in this stick is everything that needs to work here. So inside this little box at the bottom of the stick, as you move the stick around, there are contacts that touch each other inside this little box. And you'll see it's got like a metal casing on the bottom. This sits inside the shell of the Joy-Con. And what was discovered was that the actual casing of the Joy-Con has a very, very slight gap between it and the stick. So when you've been using these for a long period of time, applying quite a bit of pressure to the sticks, what can happen to the base is that it can flex ever so slightly. And by flexing, you end up with a slight gap between the contacts, which means that the stick doesn't behave as it should, which means you end up getting joystick drift. And I wanted to try this, but since I found out about it, I never encountered any drifting sticks until just recently. I got this one to have a look at and I wanted to try this method out. And the method was just super simple, like the cheapest mod fix ever, is you simply cut out a little square or rectangle of card the same size as the bottom of this stick, stick it to the bottom of the stick, put the controller back together, and it should apply just enough pressure to stop that bottom from curving out and keep everything working fine as it is, which I thought sounded great. Now, when I was trying to find out about the thicknesses of card to use, I found out that on Printables and Thingiverse, you can also download 3D printed little rectangles like this. And I've got a 3D printer here. I love 3D printing stuff. And I thought also, like, rather than trying to choose just the right thickness of card, being able to download something that someone's already tested is a great idea. So I downloaded printing, and because it's so small, it was really quick. It's a matter of like seconds to print this thing. And I thought I'd give it a go, because when I was actually trying out this stick, you can actually go into the settings on the Switch, look at the actual stick calibration and just look at how it's behaving. And on this one, like, you'd wiggle it about a bit, let go, and it would just keep moving to the left. So I knew it needed to be fixed. So to fix it, whatever the method, and I know people say you can blow compressed air into this little opening here. That's not going to do anything. Don't bother about that. But what you're going to need to do is open up the Joy-Con. There are little tri-point screws, 4 of those to remove. They're handily black and the ones on the inside are silver, so it's quite good you don't get them mixed up very easily. You remove those 4 black tri-point screws and use like a little separator tool like this to just slide your way around the edge and pop those bits apart. When you're removing bits though, do watch out because there are ribbons like everywhere connecting the bits together in this thing. So you carefully lift it and sort of flip it over. And then there's the battery, which is stuck down with a little bit of double-sided tape. So again, if you put your separator tool in a little gap, lever it out, you can remove that. And then there's a section on the inside that you need to get out. Again, you've got some small screws. This time they're crosshead ones. And you remove those 3 screws and then carefully lift out the sort of mid assembly, and then that exposes the bottom of the joystick, which is where you need to stick your extra little bit of card, or in this case plastic, because I was super confident. I downloaded this thing, printed it, used a bit of double-sided tape to stick it onto the back of the joystick, put everything back together, or tried to put everything back together. It wouldn't budge. It was like way too big. So I changed the height of the model on my software, reprinted it a little bit smaller, tried it again, didn't fit. But anyway, I'm not going to keep repeating this. I did that quite a few times until I got one that was much, much thinner. Finally got to a point where it worked, managed to put everything back together. There was one where it kind of went back together, but it felt like you needed to put a little bit too much strain on the screws, and it felt like it was just going to end up over time putting too much strain on the plastic and breaking something. Like, this is already something I'm concerned with it being broken. I don't want to make it worse. So I kept going until I could get the whole assembly back together. So it did have that extra little layer between the shell and the joystick, but it wasn't putting too much strain when I was putting it back together. It will go together quite comfortably. And I thought, brilliant. So tested it all, put it back on the Switch, tested it out, and it was just the same. The drift hadn't gone away at all. I think, to be fair, this particular stick was a bit too far gone. I think the theory is sound, this idea of supporting that area so it doesn't collapse out and so it carries on working. I think the theory is sound. But in this case, this one was just a bit too far gone, unfortunately. I've read lots of testaments that these little bits work. And I think although I was faffing about trying to get just the right thickness, once I'd worked out what the right thickness is, then I can save that file and use it over and over. Or if you want to avoid just completely laboring the whole thing, just find a bit of card from a cereal packet or something, cut it out, and away you go. It'd be much, much easier. But anyway, like I say, I love 3D printing stuff, so I went with that one. Anyway, so I was kind of back at square one, but now with an extra little bit of plastic in the controller. Thankfully, I did have one of these kits hanging around already, so I took one of the sticks out of there and ended up replacing it. To replace the stick is a little bit more involved. There are just 2 screws to take out of the back of the stick, and it's quite easy to get out of the shell, but there are a lot of ribbons obscuring the path, and you have to kind of flick up these little catches to remove a few to get the ribbons out of the way to be able to get to the screws. To take the stick out, get a new stick, pop it in, screw it back in, replace all of your ribbons, and then put it all back together. Now, I could have done that and it would have worked, but as I said before, in terms of the time, I've done it before, and over time, it's the same kind of stick and it has the same kind of flaws, and over time, it will start to drift again. So what I think is probably a fairly good way of using these little bits is to combine the additional layer with a new joystick. So what I did was I installed the new joystick, then I got my thinnest print of the layer, stuck it to the back of the new stick with double-sided tape, and reassembled the controller. And of course, it's a brand new stick, so it worked absolutely fine. But my theory is hopefully having this extra layer in there will prevent it from ending up doing the same thing that this one did. As with all these things, time will tell, but I think the theory behind it is sound, and it is a quick, easy fix, particularly if you use a bit of card instead. So I would say if you have a stick that's drifting and you've got the right tools to open up your controller, try it with the bit of card, and if it works, then great. Alternatively, if you try it with the bit of card and it doesn't work, order yourself a new stick, but when you install it, put that extra little shim, which is what we call the little bit to go in between the layers just to space it out. But that little, I believe that's what it's called. Anyway, you put that little shim in the gaps, put it back together, and hopefully it will make sure that your new stick lasts a bit longer without having drift. But anyway, as I say, we'll just have to see how that goes. But it's something that I'd heard about a while ago. I wanted to try out. I had a Joycon that I needed to fix, and well, that was what I wanted to do this week. So that's what I've been busy with this week. If you have a Joycon and it's giving you issues with drift and you want to have a go at fixing it yourself, get onto Z Labs. They've got loads of replacement parts, including the replacement thumbsticks. I will leave a link in the description, which is an affiliate link to support my channel. And also, if you click on the link and go through, it'll be automatically discounted on your order. So it's win-win. As I said earlier, I am working on a new video that is all about stick drift. If you have had issues with drift on any of your controllers, or if you've got any interesting fixes you want to share with me, or anything you'd like me to include in that upcoming video, please let me know in the comments. I want it to be a really good video and I don't want to miss anything out. So your input is greatly appreciated. Now, I have made quite a few videos about Nintendo Joy-Cons before, and I'll have probably linked them up at the top throughout the video. However, those Hall sensor joysticks are really good. If you want to know a little bit more about those, check out the video I've linked up here. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.